Welcome back to the Beyond the Wire podcast. I am your host, Tim Keller. Along with me, as he always is Mr. Matt Disher. How are you, Matt?
No complaints, Tim. We were just talking about the weather here. It's in Cincinnati, Ohio. It rains every day, and that's the weather we get. And Kandi mentioned something about getting on a plane.
Listen, I lived in Cincinnati right after college. In February of my third year, I got on an airplane, flew to Scottsdale to interview for a job, and that was kind of it. So sunshine, Matt, I'll let you borrow some of our sunshine from Phoenix.
Yeah, we're at that point. I'm about to jump on a plane too and head somewhere else. That's
No, you
raining.
may not want to come just yet. It's a little bit hot.
And so that's one of the places we've talked about. My wife talks about. If I were going to move somewhere, it would be one of these three places, and the Phoenix area is one of those. And
Party.
I told her this. I told her the same thing though. I'm like, but in the summertime, you can't go outside. So
you go from the house to the pool.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I've been in Kuwait in July, so it can't be any worse than that.
Yeah. As you've heard, now that is our guest, Kandi Tillman, joining us this week. So, Kandi, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It definitely sounds like you traded up on locations when you're moving from Cincinnati down to the Arizona area, at least the weather-wise down there. And
Arizona's home now. I've been here since 2003, met my husband, had some babies, and we're here. So, yeah,
there you go.
We love it.
Started life. Awesome.
We recruit heavily. Listen, very heavily. Even into our neighborhood, we recruit heavily. So get ready, Matt.
Yeah.
She's gonna start sending you real estate postings here.
I'm gonna have to introduce you to my wife so you can talk her into let's get out of Cincinnati.
I love it.
And as Matt mentioned, if you've ever been to the Middle East, it's a wall of heat that I've never felt before or since. I got off the plane and it was like, what? This is new. That's a new kind of heat.
Especially if you experience a sandstorm. So it already feels like 100 degrees out, and then suddenly a sandstorm comes along and it feels like somebody opened an oven full of blowing sand. And so it gets much, much hotter. And then 20 minutes later, you're buried in a pile of sand.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we like to do, we like to start off with some news. We go over some news topics, and then we kind of get into our guests and talk to them. So the first news topic I have up, the other week on the show, we discussed some of the military's COVID vaccination rates. And, Matt and I, as former Marines, we kind of got on the Marine Corps a little bit because they were way, way down the list when it came to the vaccination rate. So it seems that now the Camp Lejeune commanders have decided to offer Marines 4-day weekends to get vaccinated. So leaders at the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force are dangling prized incentives to units to encourage them to get their COVID-19 vaccines. If they meet a 65% immunization rate, the unit will get a 4-day weekend. Now, I know when I was in, those 96s did not come around nearly enough for my liking. So to get essentially here a freebie, you've already got, I can't even remember how many needles they stuck in us back there on Parris Island.
Yeah.
But what's one more?
Well, and we talked about this before. The Marines are probably avoiding this because you think about this. You run 6-7 miles 3 times a week, 4 times a week. You are a bunch of hard chargers. Statistically, and I'm saying from what I've seen in the news, COVID's largely not going to affect this population of people negatively. In fact, I mean, every Monday morning, every Sunday morning, when these devil dogs in the barracks wake up after a hard night of partying, they will go out and still put on the packs and hit the trails and run and hike and stuff like that. So, they're probably looking at it like that. But yeah, in boot camp, day 1, day 2, 15 shots in one day. I couldn't tell you what was in 14 of them. Yeah. I remember one of them was penicillin, just in case. But the rest of them, what were they? So, so what's one more shot? I don't know.
It seems that 7 of the 80 units there on Camp Lejeune have met this requirement, so they're going to get their 4-day weekend. So congratulations to those 7 units and all those Marines. Be safe. Don't do something stupid where you have to come back and get, like Matt said, one of those penicillin shots. Right. Yeah. But hey, Marines are hard-headed, and like Matt said, you're young. You think you're on top of the world. You're on top of the food chain. I don't need that vaccine. But hey, it helps everybody out. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Still to this day, I still have those moments where I'm like, that can't hurt me. Ow.
Well, and this is the thing: you join the Marines because it's going to be there's a little bit of danger and there's some travel and excitement and adventure, but mostly it's dangerous. I mean, there's something I always say is at the end of the world, if I had to be with anybody, it would be Marine infantry because we're not going to lose. And these are people that are inherently in dangerous situations, and if they're not in danger, they're going to put themselves in danger. So COVID or not COVID, that's who you want to be with when the world comes crashing down.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second news article, and I just absolutely love the headline. It's the military wants to use rockets to deliver cargo anywhere in the world in less than an hour. And immediately I said, watch out, Amazon. Here comes the U.S. military. Let's be honest. I love the U.S. military. I do not think the U.S. military could hone down logistics the way a company like Amazon has to make package delivery as streamlined as they do. So I dug into the article a little bit. The U.S. Air Force wants to test whether it's possible to move hundreds of tons of military equipment to forward operating locations and bases around the world using reusable rockets instead of mobility aircraft. There's a price tag of $47.9 million that they are asking to be added to their budget this year for development of the technology and for the testing. It seems like a hefty price tag for some testing, but could we possibly see Amazon get into the rocket game?
Well, I mean, what isn't Jeff Bezos? Doesn't he have a rocket or space company already too? Just like Elon Musk, like they are both competing for space companies, or is that?
I don't know what it is. After you hit like $1 billion, you're just like, well, I've conquered Earth. Let's go to Mars. I think that's the deal. Like, I'm the king of the world. I want the galaxy now.
I think at any rate, the military is going to have to contract third-party civilian organizations. So it will have to be something like SpaceX. They're not going to develop their own stuff, nor do they have the capacity to do that at this moment. So they hire a company to come out and do it. So before you know it, you probably will see Amazon stickers on the. This reminds me of the Avengers, the Tony Stark Enterprises,
yes,
dropping bombs and dropping materials into combat zones and things like that.
Oh my gosh, did Avengers just come up on this map?
It did, Kandi. It did.
I love it.
Now, here we go.
Well, kind of side story, Avengers is really big in my house, like every night. My husband and my son watch it. But Matt, isn't an Avengers character that my husband says that you look like?
Yeah,
which one is it?
Hawkeye.
Okay.
Jeremy Renner's character.
Yes. Funny enough, we were watching it last night and I'm like, oh my God, that's the guy Kevin thinks looks like Matt Disher. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't see it.
I
don't see it.
I never would have. I'm an Avengers fan. My youngest daughter has recently decided she wanted to watch them all in the order of how they would have played out. So I've seen them a couple times myself. I don't think I would have necessarily said that, but now that Kandi has pointed that out, it's there. It's there. How are you with the bow and arrow there, Matt?
I mean, I'm not bad. I can do things with bow and arrow. Yeah. I mean, I have to wear. Does he wear like tight leather pants and stuff like that? I don't know if I can get away with that right now. I got to start working out. But yeah. I mean, I can shoot a bow and arrow.
Hey, there you go. I don't think I necessarily look like any of the Avengers, so we can just green screen me. Maybe I could be the Hulk.
Right. Yeah.
There you go.
There it is.
Ant-Man. Probably my least favorite. I don't know. Anyways. Hey, speaking of Avengers, the new Loki comes out today for anybody out there that's an Avengers fan.
Oh, so,
yeah. Disney Plus.
Yeah,
but yeah, so Matt, you mentioned it'd be interesting if the armed forces had to sign up for Amazon Prime to get the deliveries made.
You just get on your app in the middle of combat. You're like, I need more ammo, and you get on your app, and it's not a 2-day delivery. It's Amazon Prime Plus, and you hit it, and it
1
drops
hour
off a rocket in 1 hour.
Yeah, I need more 7.62.
Do you have to tip the delivery guy, whoever pushed the button on the rocket? Here's an extra $10 tip for getting it here on time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like Grubhub, but for bullets.
Right.
I'll ask him when he shows up later today if I should actually be tipping him for the number of times he passes by my house.
I mean, I do the Amazon grocery delivery because, I started doing it during COVID because it was hard to get in and out of the grocery store. And so I started doing that, and it's super convenient because I could order it right now this morning and it would be here later on this afternoon. And they have a lot of the same stuff you find in your grocery store, but it's super convenient, especially if you got kids at home and things like that, and you just can't get out and you got work to do. And, I don't have an extra hour and a half or 2 hours to go to the grocery store and go poking around on the shelves, but you gotta tip the guys. So, if they're delivering groceries all day in their personal vehicles, I'm sure that they're not making a ton by the hour. So I always throw them an extra couple dollars, a $10 bill or something like that.
There you go. Very nice, Matt. So let's get into our guest. So we've already mentioned that Kandi is in the Arizona. I want to say the Phoenix area. Is that correct?
Yep.
Scottsdale.
Greater. So we moved out to the far West Valley about 10 years ago, but yeah, Greater Phoenix area.
Okay. And you are the co-founder of 50 Strong, correct?
Yeah. My husband, Kevin, and I stood up 50 Strong last year. I kind of run day to day. Kevin is inspiration, if you will, and we do events like this that feature military ready employers, which is how I know Matt. And so Kevin joins me for those, but kind of the day to day is me. And this is really, we stood up 50 Strong last year, to tell you the truth, because I looked around, it was like, oh my goodness, we have to do something. And part of it was COVID had just hit. We already had been thinking about kind of the idea of 50 Strong, but then COVID hit and all of a sudden it was like, bam, we need virtual engagement. Like it's an imperative. And so we just kind of started. And by started, I mean, we had a couple of close employer partners and some university partners that were like, let's just do a couple of virtual events, invite students, invite veterans, invite service members, and see what happens. 10 months later, I'm really kind of blown away by what has transpired. And so what I like to tell people is 50 Strong is simply an idea to test and learn collaboration and see what works and move on from what doesn't work. So we're really here to support employer needs. My background is almost 20 years on the corporate side. So big companies like Procter & Gamble, Oracle, SAP, Henkel, and lots of consulting with smaller businesses. My husband, when he got out of the military in 2005, struggled, frankly, with a college degree, and as a special forces soldier, struggled for almost 3 years to find steady employment. And I lived through that with him and saw kind of the impact on him. And, over the next 15 years, just heard that similar story from too many service members. And so in 2017, I basically said, you know what, if I need to go learn, I just want to learn the space. And so I left my corporate work and basically took a very entry-level job working as a congressional staffer in a congressional office, because I just wanted to learn. And it was really there where I started to hear really large employers articulate things like, we want to be engaging with student veterans at scale, and it's hard. We want to be hiring more service members at scale, and it's hard. And I just spent 4 years learning and absorbing as much as I could. And then we're just kind of going now.
Wow. Yeah. I see that you work with a congressman out there in Arizona. And then it looks like you actually did some work with the Arizona State University on the veteran side.
Yep. I consulted at ASU largely because a large Fortune 100 employer articulated and was confirmed by many others. We really want to understand how there's all these student veterans, right? So many service members come out of the military. They go full-time into school for many reasons. And so really what ends up happening is, they're in extended transition. And listen, there is not another tap once you are graduating from college.
True.
And so the reality is they're in extended transition, and we don't really have at scale career readiness for student veterans. And so they still have the same struggles, right? Navigating civilian employment is a brave new world for those that are accustomed to military norms. And so it was a great opportunity for me to go learn in a university environment. And I spent 18 months there, again, just learning and absorbing. And really a lot of that is what informed 50 Strong. But what I recognized is that it was bigger than one university. It was bigger than one employer. And it was this idea that employers and higher ed partners could and would hopefully work together toward what I'll call like an ecosystem. And what I've seen and what I try to tell people is, listen, employers stand at the ready, right? Every day I hear from employers, how do we hire more service members? How do we hire more veterans? Every single day. But the question is, how do you match those up at scale, right? Student veterans, for example, are scattered across something like 9,000 higher ed institutions, right? Matt, who leads military initiatives at Cushman & Wakefield, is one person, right? And so, you know, employers are there. Employers are past the if we should hire veterans. They want to hire veterans.
Right.
The question is, how do you do that efficiently? So we don't have all the answers, right? We're 10 months in, but we're absorbing and listening and working with some really strategic partners to help us continue to push further, if you will.
Right.
But every day is learning. 100% every day is learning.
Well, and one of the challenges we face in this space, in the military space, is I've been doing this in companies for 10 or 11 years now. And I would, if I looked around at my counterparts and peers, there are a handful of other people that have been doing it as long as I have been doing it, and I still don't have the answers.
That's right.
The reason for that is because it's a constant evolution. Skillbridge, for example, is new to my company. Skillbridge is relatively new to me. There have been programs similarly taking advantage of Skillbridge for a number of years, like Hiring Our Heroes fellowships and things like that. But the idea there is that individuals didn't want to have to go through a program, and you've got 250,000 people leaving the military every year.
Right.
And the military is allowing them to go pursue these career opportunities individually. Then we have to have some sort of doorway for them to come in. And this is not it's 5 years ago, we used to do print ads and media, and 10 years before that, the only way to reach military was to go to job fairs. And COVID shut down job fairs, and print media is, well, it's not obsolete, it's getting there. And so now everything has become digital, networking, community, as Kandi mentioned. That's the big benefit. That's why Kandi and I got together. It was how do I talk to more of these people? How do I learn while I'm building? And right now, if I had to describe, frankly, if I were sitting here talking over a couple of beers and describing how the process looks to implement some of these things inside of a company, I would say that I'm screaming down the highway on fire while I'm trying to build the road on a car with no wheels. And I quite sincerely mean that. Every day is solving new items and solving new issues. And what's happening is around Skillbridge is there's so many people who want to get involved in this, that Matt Disher is one person, not to talk about myself in the third person. I can't.
Matt Disher says.
Matt Disher. If I had to quote Matt Disher, no, quite frankly, I can't keep up with the volume. And so it's a really good problem to have. And companies are out here saying, how do we hire? How do we hire? This is something I've always said to companies. They're in your ecosystem. They're applying to your jobs. You just have to figure out a way to start talking to them. And that's where the relationships with organizations like 50 Strong come in. How do I get in front of people and tell them about my industry so that they're not knocking on my door blindly? They're not coming in going, well, what does your industry do? Now they hear from me on a series of talking events and things like that, social media, et cetera.
I know personally, when you get out of the military, I felt like you coming home, you feel like you're behind. Everybody you graduated with has, stuck around home. They've landed a job that they, have been there now for a couple years. It seems like they're on the right path, at least, from an outsider's perspective. And you come back into the fold and you're like, I don't have a job. I just got back. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And with the GI Bill and things like that, there's the easy option. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to pursue I want to go get a degree in something, whatever it is. But then you look at that and you're like, well, now I'm going to be another 2 to 4 years behind.
Right.
So I got through a couple semesters of college and I decided I know that I can go make money right now. I can go find a job. I can get into the workforce and I'll plug away. I never personally finished a degree, Matt. Congratulations to you. You actually got yourself one.
I'm not sure how I did that, but
yeah. But I think that there's a lot of veterans out there that think, well, I don't really know what I want to do, so I'll just take advantage of this essentially free money. I'll try to go get a degree and hope everything works out.
Mm-hmm.
But you come home and you get that feeling of, man, I'm already behind. And then you're sitting in there in this class and you're in there with these 18-year-olds. You're 23, 24 years old. You're like, I don't belong here. I'm falling further behind. I just need to go get something started. So I think things like 50 Strong can take that veteran who might be feeling, hey, I'm a couple years behind my peers already. And now they at least know that, hey, this university is also going to help me get in front of all these companies.
I think, and this is a really important point, right? So the thing is, education is still, for the most part, a pathway to strong employment, right? Mm-hmm. And what I see is that there are so many companies out there that have strong veteran initiatives that student veterans aren't even aware of yet. And it's not necessarily their fault. I mean, listen, and by the way, it's not free money. This is congressionally approved taxpayer dollars that we are investing into our society, into those that have served us, frankly. And so as an ecosystem, as a society, to go back a little bit to the Amazon last mile example that we were just talking about, they're serving, they come out, we've given them an education. We got to take it the last mile to get to that employment, or, it seems like a waste of economic resources. This is amazing talent that now has an education. Mm-hmm. What I'll say though is, again, when you have so many institutions and so many employers, this becomes really hard to do at scale. What I believe is that, so here's the deal. I don't believe that most veterans or student veterans or service members need case managers.
Right.
What I believe is that they need exposure to military-ready organizations, individuals inside of those military-ready organizations, and that they need a warm connect.
Right.
From there, and I see it every day, they can do the work. They just need to kind of be it's almost a little bit like that jolt. So Matt and I joke, every time he comes on a 50 Strong event, I'm like, Matt, you got to tell the story about how you're blowing up things, right? And here, it's a simple reason, right? It resonates with people that served. And I think the humility of when Matt just shares, listen, I thought it'd be easy enough for me to go get a job. Guess what? It wasn't, right? And so people need to hear that, right? They need to hear it earlier than when they're finding a job. They need to hear it when they're in the military. They need to hear it when they're a sophomore and a junior in college. Because I think that kind of relevance to somebody that has served, that knows what transition looks like, that knows what the job hunt looks like, is really, really important. Mm-hmm. And so when we can just simply tell those stories, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I get that guy or girl, right? I get that. Oh, okay. Now I see what I need to go do. It's a different rules of engagement, right? Today, like if you want to go enlist, you can go. I think there's a certain number of criteria, 8, right? Mm-hmm. It's different. When you need to go find a job, you better know what your specific value is to a specific open role. Mm-hmm. That's a different way of thinking about recruiting and human resources in general. So part of it is just understanding that and understanding how the process works sooner rather than later, so folks can start preparing.
Right. Yeah, the military does a really good job of teaching people how to be in the military. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these people, the military is their first real job. It's their first real career path, whether it's somebody who joins at 18 years old, right out of high school, or even somebody who joins 20 years old and enlists after high school. Maybe they did a couple of years of college, or they did a couple of years working at McDonald's or something like that. and now they're joining the military. It's still their first real career path. And that applies to officers too, who are post-college. The military does a really good job of teaching people how to be in the military, but it does not, to a fault almost, it does not prepare people to have those conversations about what happens next. And to your point, Kandi, companies, our company included, job descriptions say you got to have X amount of years in this and X amount of years in that. And some of these people look at these things and they go, I don't have any of those. And the hiring managers say, well, this person doesn't have any of those. What I hear from a lot of military people is, hey, I can do this. It's like, I know you can do it. It's just that corporate America is not set up to allow you to do it. And that's where we have to close the gap. That's where Skillbridge comes in.
Yep.
I know you can do it. I know that a 20-year military career, you have 3 different jobs a year for, every year you're changing jobs, changing billets. You have all these different opportunities and they just plunk things down in your lap and you have to be good at them. That's the way the military operates. There's no better preparation for the rest of your life than the U.S. military. However, we just don't do a very good job. We, corporate America, are not doing a very good job of understanding how to take those people and bring them into the business and close that gap.
But I think really this is where, and to your point earlier, Matt, like this is really why Skillbridge is so revolutionary, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it really, in my opinion, it really is the future of where we're going with veteran employment. Skillbridge really gives companies a really strong reason to bring talent on board and basically try it out so that both the service member, the job seeker, and the company can figure out if it's a good fit. Right. Frankly, I'll never forget the day that my husband, then he wasn't, said to me, I don't know what I can do other than swing a bat or shoot a gun. My husband played baseball before he went to the military. And it was heartbreaking, right? He called off our wedding, right? It was heartbreaking. It was awful to watch. It was harder to, you just feel helpless. That hasn't left me. And so now, 15 years later, listen, it's ironic that I am out here adamantly supporting a DoD program, but Skillbridge is, I'm overwhelmed with what I'm seeing, and I say that from an employer perspective. My phone literally is ringing off the hook with employers saying, how do I participate? Just tell me how to participate and we'll go do it. Right. This is really exciting, especially for what I think the future holds for the program.
Yep.
That is fantastic. And what's even better about your story, Kandi, is the fact that you personally never served in the military.
I never served.
You found a man that you fell in love with who had some prior service, and you decided, hey, I watched this individual and their path and their struggles and their highs and their lows. How can I make sure this doesn't happen to the next individual or their partner? And you've started this program. It's fantastic.
Well, and again, the other caveat, I'm not even a military spouse, right? I didn't know my husband when he served, so I only have seen the transition part of it. But I think the other part for me was my corporate background, almost 20 years on the corporate side, gave me a different perspective, right, for me to kind of bring to bear. The reality is companies are not nonprofits. Companies are not here to bring veterans on board out of goodwill. This is the reality, right? And it's important that we talk about this. Companies have a P&L responsibility, and every single headcount that they open up somehow ties to that P&L, right? And so you can't just give somebody a job out of the goodness of your heart. You open a job, every hiring manager opens a job and has to meet KPIs based on that open headcount. This is really important, right? And so I think this is really why I'm so hot on the Skillbridge program, because it gives service members an opportunity to go and demonstrate their specific value in a civilian environment. And I think that's what's really needed, right? We've seen so often that service members may not do as well, quote unquote, in an interview, right? They may be more abrupt. They may they may be more direct.
Right.
And so there's things, I think, and this is where it's almost like until the front door is open wide enough, Skillbridge is this really amazing side door, right? To prove it out in a sandbox environment, if you will.
I want to touch on something you just said too, Kandi.
Yeah.
So when we talk about companies are not nonprofits. Companies who are doing hiring, who are, who have shareholders and investors to talk to. Let's talk about the benefits of Skillbridge here too, because there's a dollar amount associated with this, and
there is.
I'll talk about a few things that we look at to sweeten the pot. And I say this because this does not define the reason why we run military programs in corporate America. I think some of these things started out a long time ago as it's the right thing to do, probably a good PR move, things like that. I used to work for a company, Cintas Corporation. I used to lead the military programs there. And I know that Cintas engaged military a long time ago because Richard Farmer, the founder of Cintas, was a Marine officer and said, hey, we need to expand this company in like the late 90s, early 2000s or something like that, or early 90s, I'm sorry. And said, who better to have managers on board than military officers and NCOs. So they went out and did it out of recognizing this is the best leadership in the world. Let's go get it. Now we're talking about this. LinkedIn commissioned a study a few years back, and this study showed that military veterans stick around in their jobs longer. They get promoted faster. They are more productive than their civilian counterparts, et cetera, et cetera. But now you've got things like the work opportunity tax credit around military programs, which offers companies tax credits for hiring, especially after 2020, hiring short-term and long-term unemployed veterans, disabled veterans, things like that. There are tax incentives for that.
That's
One
right.
step further, Skillbridge, and we look at this way. So now you're telling me that I can get the best talent in the world, the most experienced and diverse, by the way. When we record our diversity numbers around hiring military, our diversity numbers in the military, our military and veteran hires are higher than the diverse population of the United States by comparison. So I'm hiring more people out of the military who are more diverse than the population of the United States. So Skillbridge offers us now this great talent, diverse, experienced talent, and I can have them for free for up to 6 months. So now I can take the infantry officer, I can take the logistics officer, I can take the machinist mate, the enlisted nuclear electrician's mate out of the Navy, for example, or any of these jobs, anything, literally anything. And I can bring them into my business and they can come learn our industry. I can take the 80%, 85% of what they already have that works well in my business. And I can train them on the other 15% at no cost to me. And that represents tens of thousands, if you do it at scale, millions of dollars in payroll and benefit savings. So now it's literally a zero risk proposition for a company to say, sign me up, I'll take 50 of them. Sign me up, I'll take 100. If every company did this, imagine you'd be put out of business, Kandi. I wouldn't have a job anymore if we were all doing this. This conversation would not happen. The conversations that I know we have a mutual connection that testified before a congressional panel recently. I did the same thing a few years back, and the conversation is, what can we do to make this better? How do we fix this? All those conversations go out the window if everybody signed up for this program and started doing it the right way. But I realize that that's a 10-year project.
And I think here's the thing, right? Skillbridge is in its infancy. And the reality is, to your point, we know that military talent is strong.
Right.
What Skillbridge really does is it lets the service member go learn and demonstrate their specific value in that civilian environment.
Right.
Most of the time it works out really well, right? The goal of Skillbridge is always long-term full-time employment, right? And so I think there's kind of a dual part of the financial part, right? No company, no employer should ever be looking at them as free labor, ever, right? But the companies that are really thinking about this strategically are those that say, wait, we have all these roles open. This is amazing talent. Why would we not participate in a program like this?
Right.
What I will tell you is I spent almost 3 full years navigating Skillbridge on behalf of my employer partners, and I'm still learning every day. And so part of what we're seeing is it's not just do we want to hire veterans or do we want to participate in Skillbridge? It is what is the roadmap as an employer that I need to take to get there?
Right.
And so there are employer partners that are really leading what I'd call toward the mission on behalf of the entire community, really kind of leading the charge, sharing best practices with other companies every day. Matt is doing this with Cushman and Wakefield, Mike Piper with Lowe's, Bo Higgins with Amazon. There are so many leaders that are literally sharing best practices. You know why? Because they all served and they all get it and they all want to help. So in this space, it's interesting. So we just started, sorry, my nose is running. We started in January, this concept of the 50 Strong Skillbridge Connect. These are monthly networking events that are basically made possible thanks to 4 of our partners. Again, another shout out to Cushman and Wakefield for this. And what we do is we basically host these events and we invite in those partners, but we invite in 20 other Skillbridge providers, most of which are large Fortune 500 employers. And then we invite service members in. We invite in transition counselors, right? We invite in commands. And basically, this is an opportunity for service members to meet directly with the Skillbridge program leaders at these major companies. Mm-hmm. And so I literally yesterday afternoon alone got 2 notes. Oh my gosh, I met somebody at the 50 Strong Skillbridge networking event. I've got an interview set up. I met somebody there. I heard from a spouse yesterday that attended with her husband, a military spouse, attended with her husband, just landed a really awesome role, full-time role as a military spouse, right?
That's awesome.
And so what we're seeing is we started this in January, like, oh my goodness, are these companies going to collaborate? Guess what? They are, right? Yeah. Super cool. We've been doing this 4 months. We had 400 service members register to attend in May. I had to turn off the outreach because I wasn't sure our Zoom could handle it. But it's, every day, again, if I can impress upon people, it is not, do we want to hire service members and veterans? It is, how do we do it efficiently? How do we do it at scale? And guess what? The second thing is that really warms my heart. 100% corporate America is willing to collaborate around this initiative, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, of course they want you at their company, but guess what? You know what they really want? They want to see veterans in jobs. You know why? Because veterans not in jobs is not a good scenario.
Right.
And everybody knows it.
Right.
Yeah, Matt's talked plenty of times where he'll start the conversation with somebody, and for whatever reason, whatever they're looking for or whatever location they want to be, Matt just can't find that match. He can't pair them up with a role in his company, but he knows because of his time doing the job he's been doing, he knows X, Y, and Z that are in very similar roles to him in that area. And he can say, hey, I don't personally have anything for you, but I know these 3 individuals that might. Let me connect you with these people, and we'll see if we can't get you, moving on down the road. Yeah, I was going to bring up these employer connects on 50 Strong. Is that what you were just talking about?
So
yeah, these look fantastic. If veteran service members and military spouses, as you just mentioned. So if I'm going to use myself as an example. I see you guys are having one of these. What should someone expect going into one of these?
Yeah, so we have 2 series right now. The first is the Employer Connect. We share this out in collaboration with 16 universities that represent about 100,000 military affiliated students. The goal when we first started that series was, could we help support military specific career readiness for students? And could we do it by simply having industry partners, the employers, if you will, come in and basically share their insights, share their connections, share their jobs. So they're always featuring military ready, currently hiring employers that are willing, right, that are resourced to support military hiring. What we found in that effort is, while it was intended for student veterans, we had way more active duty joining. And the reason was because they were also transitioning and also desperately looking for connections with these large employers. So that's one of our series. Everybody is welcome for that. Those are generally a webinar type format, although we've had so much success with the live networking events that we're going to be doing more of that come the fall. Those are generally every Thursday. We're on a break for the summer, but I do have 2 big networking events coming up soon. So stay tuned. And then our second series is the 50 Strong Skillbridge Connect series. that is specifically for Skillbridge opportunities. And again, that's a really targeted effort because, again, I believe Skillbridge is revolutionary. I also am seeing that employers' industry-driven collaboration is really important in this space. The program in 2019, there were about 120 DoD authorized Skillbridge programs. I'll give a shout out to the leadership of Boris Kuhn at this point. As of today, I think there are something like 905 DoD authorized Skillbridge programs. That is tremendous growth inside of 18 months during COVID that we should all look around and be like, whoa, this has just opened the floodgates.
Yep.
And now where do we all go from here to help service members find that right match for them?
Right.
Yeah. And this post-COVID world that we're starting to enter, this revolving door of talent we're seeing, every company out there seems to have a now hiring sign up.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if we see that number continue to increase at this rate, if not greater, for things like Skillbridge, because the need for employees is not going away. And, it's not that it's an untapped market, but Skillbridge, as you guys have both mentioned, is in its infancy. And there's so many opportunities out there that, once more of these companies figure this out and really look at it, dig into it, Matt understands that sometimes companies' legals departments can kind of get in the way. But once you get past those first couple hurdles, I think there's going to be a lot of companies taking advantage.
Listen, I also want to point out there are employers can work through existing third-party Skillbridge providers, especially as a pilot or as kind of a sandbox, right? So actually, this is a really important point. Every Friday, I host an employer Q&A because, frankly, we just had so many employers inquiring. And so basically what I do is I take 3 years of that and try to synthesize it into 15 minutes. I spent a lot of time in solution marketing at Oracle, and basically I'm really trying, this is where I call on my skills from my previous industry, right? And what I tell employers is I do this every Friday. If you want to hop into a session and just listen, I'm going to distill everything that it took me 3 years to learn into 15 minutes.
Right.
Because my goal is I've seen too many employers churn. And when employers churn, all that does is hurt service members and delays opportunity. So this is really where I feel my specific value is, and where I've tried to really play a role is employers don't churn, right? Let's get you the information that you need. Let's get you connected to the best practices in the industry that you need so that you don't waste time. That indirectly supports service members and their families. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of where we are. We don't do a lot of kind of one-to-one counseling with service members and veterans. It's me. I don't have the time. But we try to do as much at scale work and as much employer enablement as possible.
I've benchmarked with a handful of organizations lately in the last couple of months that are trying to also stand up Skillbridge programs. And, we're newer to Skillbridge ourselves. Just since almost the end of 2020 is when we've brought on our first person.
And yet, Matt, I would consider you one of the more strategic thinkers in this space on the employer front. And this is a really important point, right? We're all learning. We are all learning here.
Right. Well, and our approach was this, and this is my advice to other organizations that are trying to stand these up. It is, don't get caught up in trying to define this program. Stop thinking about how you have built all your other programs and that you have to think them out for a year and you got to strategize and have all the plans in place before you execute. Because what we did instead was we don't want to wait to execute. We want to just jump in. We've already been doing this, again, similarly with other third-party Skillbridge providers. We've been doing it for years. We already understand the plan. We didn't get tied up in legal because it's an MOU. There's nothing binding. It's simply we'll follow the rules that you've set forth, and we'll make sure that we're not taking advantage of these service members, and we're not charging them money or anything like that. It's truly and purely a learning opportunity to come into our industry and learn to get plugged into a full-time job thereafter, which is honestly, barring any candidate saying, hey, I'm going to move to somewhere where we don't have a job, which has happened, all of the candidates that go through this program are ending up with an opportunity on the back end, a well-paying opportunity. And this is what I tell the other companies with whom I'm benchmarking. if you've got jobs open, if you are anticipating filling a job, let's call it in August, instead of going out to the street and looking for a full-time person, if it's applicable, go to the military, go to Skillbridge and say, do I need a logistician? Logisticians are coming out of the military in droves. Mm-hmm. If you are looking for mechanical maintenance engineering people, they're coming out of the military in droves. Every company's looking for those people right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might be working on systems in a submarine or on an aircraft carrier. The old coworker of mine, Vince Sumter, a wise gentleman with whom I worked, used to say, if you turn an aircraft carrier up on its side, it has the same systems. It looks like a skyscraper. It's a boat sitting in the water. It has the same systems as our buildings. Mm-hmm. So it's a don't overthink it. Just jump in and start looking at it and start plugging. If you have the MOU done and the DoD has let you in the door, start marketing your opportunities and start building training plans and making sure that your managers and your leadership understand how to support these people. But you have this massive opportunity at your fingertips right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, that's a really good point. So, our buddy Chris, he used this term one time and he said, there is no service member vending machine, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really important that employers understand you can't just stand up a program and basically okay, come to me, right? It doesn't work like that. It is just like any other strategic initiative where it has to be resourced. Engagement has to be proactive. You have to be building a brand around what it means to be being military ready. And so it still does take effort and resources. It takes training. It takes alignment with business leaders. Those all take time, right? And so I think that's also the really important point is, I have the pleasure of also interfacing with lots of service members and students and veterans in the community. And, there's a couple of takeaways that I've seen. Skillbridge is not an easy lift for any employer, right? It does require work. Also, another really important thing is while Matt, for example, is doing amazing work, he can't just open a job for somebody, right? That takes so much effort. And so I just think it's important that folks understand how this side works, right? There is no easy button, right?
And to that point, Kandi, this is the other thing that I've been discussing and benchmarking with other companies who are aiming to do this type of work. It is that you can't do this off the side of your desk. Don't say, here, let's hand this off to HR and it'll be effective. Just like any military programs, you simply can't be like, here, recruiters, go try to do this. It doesn't work that way. You'll have no foundation. It'll look disingenuous. It'll look
people see like through that.
Yeah, right. And that is what separates the companies that have legacy military programs. I always use, some of these companies as an example. Obviously, Amazon has so many resources poured forth to military programs. They're a great example of how to dedicate resources to making this thing work. And it's genuine. You've got a lot of people that are driving that ship, so to speak, who have themselves hung up the uniform and come to work for the business.
That's exactly right.
You can't do this thing where it's like, here, we're going to do the MOU and we're going to put up a couple of jobs and then we'll hope that people come banging on our door. Because what's happening right now is in my own world, I am buried. I mean, physically buried in interest. I have people.
Yes.
If people knew where I lived, I'm sure that they'd be at my front door. And it's Matt, LinkedIn, it's email.
I've got 2 messages right now sitting in my inbox with your name on it, right? Yeah. Asking about you. Right.
So this is the thing. We're trying to get to a point in my company. We're trying to get to the point where we can make this as efficient as we can. And quite transparently, I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. There is never a point where we sit back and say, yes, we're finished. It is a constant evolution of problem solving. And so with this, it's
the definition of innovation. You don't stop.
It really is. There's always a better way to do it.
Yep.
We just have to continue to, and it doesn't mean that we have to continue to dedicate resources. This is back to the conversation I've had with other employers who are trying to put these programs together. My answer to them is, if your company is simply hesitant to dedicate a resource and pay them a salary, first of all, they don't have it. They need to change their mindset. They need to review why they're trying to do these programs. But secondly, back to that cost savings and cost effectiveness and all of the other financial benefits that come along with this, hiring a person and paying them a salary to run this is a drop in the bucket compared to what you're going to get out of it. And so we all know the cost of turnover, or if we don't, you have to understand the cost of turnover is essentially 1.5 times the person who's left, whatever you're paying them. And so if you're turning people over and you're not promoting them, they're not as productive, et cetera, you lose a lot of money in productivity, you lose a lot of money in turnover, but also now you're getting offered this opportunity to bring people into this program, and you don't, while you're engaging them and teaching them your industry, you're not paying them. The DoD is paying them. It's effective. It's cost effective.
And I think too, so I think too, there's what I'll call Fortune 500, right?
Mm-hmm.
That definitely, for the most part, are resourcing military initiatives. Now, could they be resourcing it more? Yeah, sure.
Right.
Then there's this whole other group of companies, smaller employers that, frankly, here's the reality. They're never going to have a dedicated military initiative leader or a military recruiter. It's just never going to happen. So I get asked a lot, if I fall into that bucket, can I still participate in Skillbridge? And I think it's really important to call that out. We all talk a lot about the larger companies that are participating, me included, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really important to remember that employers of any size mm-hmm. can participate in Skillbridge. They just need to find the pathway that makes sense for them based on their resources. Right. And so not every employer needs to stand up their own Skillbridge program. There are many what I'll call enabling Skillbridge providers out there that they can go and work with. There are mm-hmm. Skillbridge providers aligned to regions, aligned to functional areas, aligned to manufacturing. There are some state-run programs. Like there's many ways that employers can. There's not many. There's mainly two, but there are two, right?
It feels
At least
like many.
two. And there's maybe a third one, but it's nuanced. So,
yes.
So I just think it's important that employers understand that mm-hmm. it shouldn't be this 12-month project with no movement. There are ways to kind of start to prove it out. And this is really, so in addition to supporting lots of other Skillbridge providers, 50 Strong is also a DoD authorized provider of Skillbridge. This is a small part of our work, but I think it's an important part because we've set up our program to be a sandbox, if you will, for employers. 1 or 2 roles to kind of pilot it out to see if standing up their own program makes sense. And we did this because I think something like 80% of jobs are through smaller businesses, right? Mm-hmm. We need them, right? The workforce needs those jobs. Our service members need to have access to those jobs. So it's really important that we're enabling them in Skillbridge as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the big employers get talked about because they're the names that everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
Amazon's,
but they're important,
Lowe's.
right?
Yeah.
Like literally. So Amazon and Lowe's are 2 of our really big partners on the Skillbridge front, and ADP. They're important, right? Yeah. Along with Cushman & Wakefield. They're important because they're basically saying we'll lead, and we'll basically support for the rest of everybody else to learn, right? They're being really good community partners. This is super exciting. I mean, super exciting.
I think it is great though that I would imagine that there's plenty of small businesses out there, like you said, just they won't ever have that resource, that military dedicated resource. That it's something that those companies also need to know. If Tim's body shop, as a former veteran, I want to hire other veterans. This is a great resource for me to tap into. But I'm thinking, man, I got 20 people that work in my shop here. Mm-hmm. I probably can't get into that. I'm not Lowe's. I'm not Cushman & Wakefield. I'm not Amazon. Nobody's going to come work for me. Yeah, I bet there are people who want to come work for me.
Well, and on a smaller level, if you're a small organization, here's the deal. You go into when you do the MOU, the DoD allows you then to start posting inside of the Skillbridge website, for example. So at Cushman & Wakefield, I have probably like 30 postings up because we have opportunities in all these major markets. I am trying to attract as many people as I can because I have just tons of jobs open right now that we can source into. If you're a small organization, if you're Tim's Body Shop, you get the MOU approved. DoD says, yes, you can absolutely host Skillbridge people. You simply go into that website and on any other medium where you want to promote your job and you say, hey, I've got this job in Pennsylvania. I'm Tim's Body Shop. If you have done body work in the military, you worked on vehicles or heavy wheeled vehicles or whatever, and you want to come do this type of work on the outside, they will come knock on your door. And the thing is, you're going to attract the people who are sort of thinking in that career fashion. So in other words, you're not going to get the dentist from the Navy coming and knocking on your door to come work in body work. So you're not going to be overwhelmed in that sense. You don't have to have dedicated resources at your small business in order to effectively organize or execute Skillbridge. Large companies would have to, because if you're trying to really scale this thing out, again, it can't be something off the side of your desk. You can't hand it off to your HR manager and be like, here, bring in 50 Skillbridge interns while you're doing your day-to-day job. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Good luck with that. So if you're a veteran, if you're still active duty, if you're a student veteran, military spouse, how can they get in touch with 50 Strong? How can they, start to access some of these resources?
Our website, 50-strong.us. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn heavily. Those are the two I definitely recommend. I just stood up a TikTok channel last night with my daughter's help. We'll see what we do with that. But definitely LinkedIn. We predominantly focus on LinkedIn simply because it's the platform that I think is really important for employment. It's where the recruiters are. And my goal is always to talk less and to have employers that have the jobs talking more. And that's where they are talking, right, is on LinkedIn. And so that's really where the majority of our presence is as well, to align to that. But yeah, either any of those channels.
That is fantastic. And it was a very smart move to go to your social media manager to set up that TikTok account. My oldest, who's 16, my wife dabbles a little bit. I'm getting too old for this stuff. I don't know. I don't know anymore.
We need a social media manager for the Beyond the Wire podcast, by the way. So if anybody wants to pick up some contract work for free, that'd be great.
Contract work for free.
Yeah.
Some volunteer work.
Yeah, you can put it on your resume. But Kandi, I wanted to thank, first I'll thank you very much for all the work you're putting in. Also, wanted to thank your husband for his service very much.
I'll let him know.
But what you guys are doing, you doing the day-to-day operation, you actually doing the heavy lifting, and him just getting to stand over there to the side. And I'm the inspiration for all this, it is fantastic what 50 Strong is doing. I hope you guys continue to push these boundaries. And I like the fact that when you first started this conversation today, you said it's a place for us to figure out what works and a place for us to figure out what doesn't. And then move, hey, this isn't working. Let's push this off to the side. Keep what's working. Let's try some new things out. Streamline this process. Make it as lean as possible.
Yep. To me, it's really, we live in listen, make no mistake, the veteran employment space is an industry in and of itself, right? And really, the question is, any industry can always evolve, right? We can always learn together and figure out what works and the best practices and push those forward. When the day comes, Tim, that, listen, I'll happily go back to my corporate work if and when the day comes that I feel like, okay, we've done what we set out to accomplish, right? But as more employers call and say, hey, we want to hire more service members and veterans, but we still need help. I really don't know if this is, frankly, I don't know if this is a 20-year thing. I don't know if I'll retire in this industry, if you will, but I know for today and for the next 6 months, right? This is the right thing to do based on, frankly, the feedback from the jobs providers, right? So this is really kind of where I'm focused. My husband jokes, we have a 5-year contract with an option to renew, simply because we just always want to make sure that we're on our game and bringing value to the family. Probably a whole other episode in and of itself. My apologies. But my point is, that's kind of how I see in this space, where I just know what I need to be doing for the next 6 months. And then we'll kind of adapt from there. So all of our events, I always tell people, this is test and learn. We're going to have hiccups, but listen, we're never going to push and grow if we aren't comfortable with those hiccups. And I say the same thing to employer partners, right? Just like Matt said, you don't have to have it all figured out, but just kind of work on those baby steps. It's really important.
Yeah. You're not going to grow muscle without some soreness, and you're not going to grow a good business model without some growing pains. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. So, thank you very much for joining us, Kandi. Again, thank you for all the work you and 50 Strong are doing. Appreciate everything. We'd love
Tim.
to have you back some other time, maybe
Awesome.
down the line after you've figured some more things out and you can share some new knowledge with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. Great to be with you both. Matt, always great to see you.
I'm sure we'll talk today at some point in time.
Sounds fantastic.
So thank you very much for joining us here on the Beyond the Wire podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know somebody that would, you can reach out to Jeremy Renner. I mean, Matt Disher.
Hawkeye. You call me Hawkeye.
Hawkeye. You can
My
reach
son's
out
going to be so happy that he got a mention, and so did Hawkeye.
There you go. There you go. We made somebody's day, Matt. How about that?
Well, that's what I aim to please.
There you go. So you can check us out on all the major social media platforms except TikTok, because, like I said,
My daughter will help you too, Tim.
I just try to. It's some of it's past me at this point. And you can also find us on all the major podcast platforms. You can check us out, give us a like, listen, rating, and review. It helps us find new listeners and new subscribers. Appreciate every one of you. We'll see you right back here next week on the Beyond the Wire podcast.
Thanks, guys.